Quiero darles la bienvenida al primer encuentro de arte lumínico, que es un encuentro que hemos organizado en Toulouse junto con Marco Martínez y con el apoyo del Ministerio de Cultura, el Ministerio de Ciencias, City Lab y la Escuela de Diseño de la Universidad Católica de Chile. Hoy día vamos a tener el honor de tener a tres grandes artistas con nosotros, que son Aleksandra Stratimirovic y Lewin, y vamos a tener también a nuestra host, Paulina Villalobos, así que va a ser una jornada de puras mujeres, de mucho talento y muchas ganas, ¿cierto? Mucha belleza también. Esta charla va a ser en inglés, así que de ahora en adelante vamos a hablar en inglés. Esto va a estar grabado, y cuando subamos la grabación a nuestro canal de YouTube, vamos a poder ponerle subtítulos. Así es que cualquier duda que tengan va a estar en el chat. Ahora vamos a empezar a cambiar el switch al inglés. So, welcome everybody to the Light Art Symposium. It's our first activity that we do about light art. It's a 3-day activity. It starts today with three talented and powerful light artists, Aleksandra Stratimirovic and Lewin, who are from different parts of the world, different time zones also. And also we have our host, also very talented, Paulina Villalobos. So I welcome you. We are very honored to have you here, and we want to listen to your talks and your light art expressions. Thank you, Paulina. Thank you, Liz, Aleksandra, and Jen. So I leave the word to Paulina.
Thank you, Jimena, and thank you to the three amazing artists that are joining us this morning in this, our first meeting about light and art. So we hope with this, the first day that in this opening, that the next will be better and better and better. So I will switch to Spanish for a second, y les voy a pedir a los invitados, a los que están contemplando, si pueden apagar sus micrófonos. Y gracias. So we will listen first to Liz West, then to Aleksandra, and then to Jen Lewin. And to start with Liz, the three of them are amazing lighting artists, and Liz, what I know for her work is she works also with, not just with the electrical light, or she works with the experimentations with color and what the sunlight and the natural light do with that. I will make the introduction in Spanish, so we will switch languages. Liz West es una artista británica conocida por su amplia gama de obras.
Yo no daría la pelea.
Monumental. Y usando una variedad de materiales y explorando el uso de la luz, dibuja los límites entre la escultura, la arquitectura, el diseño y la pintura para crear obras que son divertidas e inmersivas. So Liz, I don't know if you understand Spanish, but that was your presentation. So we will be very happy now to listen to your talk, and then at the end, feel free to ask whatever you like in between each other, and also I will ask some questions, and I will open the floor to the audience. So it's to make this more like an intimate a presentation rather than a formal one. So thank you, Liz, to being with us.
Hi everybody, and thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure to be invited to speak to Latin America. this evening for me here in Manchester in the UK. I'm going to share my screen and hope that technology doesn't let me down. Can you let me know if you can see colour on your screen? Great.
Yes.
Well, as you can see from my first slide, this talk is going to be colourful, and that is absolutely what I'm about. And of course, light, the two together creating immersive experiences for audiences to breathe in, encounter, and hopefully take joy from. So I thought about what you might like to hear in the short time that we have together, and I thought it would be worthwhile taking you on a bit of a journey, telling you how I got from the beginnings to where I am now. So I'm not going to start right at the beginning from like when I was born, but it is important to say that I was the daughter, or am the daughter, of two artists. So my mum being a painter and my dad being a sculptor, both living and working in the UK. It was really no coincidence that I became an artist and ended up going to the Glasgow School of Art in Scotland. So here I am, looking much slimmer and younger in my third and final year of my degree. And it's important to say that I made work for 2 years that had nothing to do with colour, nothing to do with light. And it was only in my third year that a tutor took me to one side and observed that I was indeed a very sensory person and had quite a lot of, you know, I always wanted to be tactile. I would always, when I was in a conversation with someone, I would always be listening to all the conversations in the room, not just the conversation I was having. I was just a really fussy eater as well. So textures of food were really important to me, and light. There was no coincidence that I grew up in a grey northern city and then decided to go to university in another grey northern city where it rains all the time. So it was for my own well-being that I started making work using colour and light combined. It really appealed to my sensibilities, but also I have seasonal affective disorder, and I think quite a lot of people in the Northern Hemisphere do. And making work about colour and light was really therapy, self-therapy for me at that time, and still is. So here I am back in the early 2000s, just playing about with different ways of seeing and using colour to see the world in different lights. I know it's rudimentary and crude, but a filter over one's head does quite paint the picture of an orange universe. And so what I do is create different masks for myself to wear. And then I began developing a series of works where I lit with fluorescent lamps in the ceiling and mirrored walls, so to create these chambers. And the only way you could view them was through this narrow aperture in the wall. And these spaces were completely ambiguous in terms of scale because the mirrors worked like infinity rooms. I filled the rooms also with singular coloured objects. At the time, I'd been playing a lot with collections, so that's where that came from. It was actually a tutor that, as I previously mentioned, had taken me to one side and said, Liz, instead of making paintings, which I had been doing, why don't you film yourself making the paintings close up, so just filming the canvas, and then projecting the films of the paintings into an empty space. And it was when I saw the projected light completely immersing that space with colour that I realised that it was additive mixing or colour in light that really, really interested me, rather than subjective mixing pigments. So I ended my time at Glasgow School of Art on a high, and I was really delighted with my degree show, which was another one of these chambers filled with singular coloured yellow objects. And then what happened between then and here, you'll see a big gap. There's this 5 years. Well, that time I moved back in with my mum and dad because I ran out of money at college. I was a security guard for 3 years, working at events up and down the UK. And during that time, I would really pay attention to how stage lighting and touring was being produced. So, for example, I'd be stood on an exit gate asking celebrities for passes. But what I was really doing was using it as research and looking at how people put on live events to, you know, massive scales like Glastonbury Festival and V Festival and big concerts by the likes of U2 or Coldplay or, you know, big international artists. And all that fed into what was yet to come. Then I moved to Manchester and made my first solo exhibition. So I would be sending photographs of my degree show work all around the world for potential opportunities. And of course, there was a lot of rejections. But for this particular exhibition, you know, it was 2 years of conversations with the curator, who had obviously fallen in love with me because he is now my husband. So not only did I get a solo exhibition, but I also got a ring, which worked out really nice. So in this exhibition, it was a really ambitious show. It was making site-specific work. So for example, in these 4 different rooms you see on the screen, these rooms had been used by separate and individual artists before. So maybe drawings in one, sculpture in another, projection in another. Whereas I decided to use them to make one artwork. And this was really my first exploration of colour therapy and placing people and allowing people to experience pure saturation in an art gallery context. So, for example, I spent a lot of time in that red room and felt very comfortable and relaxed in the red. I could have spent hours and hours in there, but felt really, really tense and angry and uncomfortable in the green room. Whereas Mark, my husband, hated the red room, couldn't get out of there quick enough, but yet found the green room incredibly calming and relaxing. So it was at this point and in this exhibition that I really started to tune in to people's opinions and perceptions on immersive colour. And it was from this point that I started thinking about how I could make artwork about how we all have a different way of seeing the same colour. And I also made quite a lot of let's call it human or domestically scaled work as well at this point, often in quite interesting spaces and using materials that I was super interested in, like mirrors, fluorescent lamps, and the rawness of the cables, and letting those spill out onto the floor to make a spatial drawing. And what I was interested in even back then, and this work was made in 2013, was using mirrors, for example, to illuminate the space, so people would be able to see elements of the space that they might not normally notice. So you're basically doing this, raising people's eyes and showing them elements of what's around them that they might not see. I also made this work in the same show, so very simple, a stack of T8 fluorescent light sticks in the spectral order, just balancing and teetering on top of each other as a sculpture. But what was really interesting about this work was the separation of the coloured shadows on the adjacent wall. Between making that work and the next work I'm going to show you, I had what is known as an artist block. And this was quite a stumbling block for me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know what to make. And I think there's probably times in every artist's career where you suffer from this. So my answer was to ask my friends and my family for advice, and my mum, being a tutor in an art school as well as an artist herself, said, Liz, why don't you give yourself the opportunity, time and space to have a think? And my husband said, why don't you just go on a residency, a self-initiated residency to Cumbria's Merzbarn, and instead of pushing yourself to make new work, just lay out big swathes of paper or plastic on the walls, and over the period of the week, just add things. Ask yourself the big questions: why colour? Why light? Why am I an artist? What else could I do? And as you can see from this image, over the duration of that week, I started adding elements and really answering these big questions about what were the backbones of my practice. And it was from this that I then went on to make what I still think is one of my best works. It was one of my biggest works, most successful works. And I came back so strong from doing this, but I needed this time to really interrogate who I was and what I was doing. So this is when things got tasty and really interesting. So at this point, I started taking on space in a really big way and making things that were monumental and totally immersive, and things that I was in love with. Because if you're not in love with something yourself, then how can you expect anyone else to be? I hope that passion comes through in the images of my work. So this piece, Your Colour Perception, was looking at exactly what I wanted to right at the start, which was investigating how we all have different perceptions of colour. And this was a 10,000 square foot space in an abandoned building in Manchester in the UK. And this was made from a bag of scrap theatre gels, which I hand wrapped each individual fluorescent lamp with, that were integrated into the ceiling rig of this old office space. And I spent a week up a ladder doing this. And I hoped that when the magic hour happened, so of course like 3-4 o'clock in January in the UK, the artwork would extend out of the space, through the windows and into the sky. As we know, the sky can be a beautiful sapphire colour at that time. People would walk through the space and think about what each colour made them feel. And I heard some great stories and observed people really taking on this work as their own. So, because it wasn't in an art gallery context, it was only open for 2 days. And as I say, it was in an abandoned building. People took ownership of it. People came in and with their pets, people came in and did choreography and dances or singing or brought their musical instruments. People would lie on the floor and bathe in the colour. People would run, little children were amazing to observe. They would just run up and down the length of the space, really liberated by this saturate colour. And there was one lady who I listened to, and she said, I stood in the orange, and that particular orange reminded me of the colour of my grandmother's wallpaper in the 1970s. And all of a sudden, all my senses opened, and I could smell the burning toast in her flat, and I could hear what she was playing on the radio. So colour and light have these amazing opportunities to open our senses. And this work was great because it was easy enough to make if you were being given spaces that had pre-existing fluorescent lighting. Now, it's hard for me to remake this work now, only 6 years later, because a lot of spaces have been changed to LED lighting, which doesn't quite have the same effects as the old fluorescents. So I made this piece again for the Bristol Biennial and it was open for a bit longer this time, just still only 9 days. And I think the reflective floor in this space really elevates the work. You could almost look at this image upside down and it would still read the same. But again, people came and owned it themselves. And I'm always stood there in the background, listening, observing, and all that goes into my research to make future work. It was after making this piece, which I had made completely by myself and self-funded, that I then got opportunities to make paid commissions like this one. And I really enjoyed taking principles of light or colour theory and making them into immersive environments, so people could actually experience what an additive mix is. So here in the ceiling is 250 individual, differently coloured 6-foot fluorescent lamps, collectively making white light. So people would expect, for example, to see on their skin stripes of light. But here I am with no stripes of light on me at all, bathing in pure white light. I think this work was borrowing ideas from my degree show with the mirrored chamber. And people were always frustrated with that work, that they couldn't get in it. They could only look at it through a small gap in the wall. And so this work was really giving people an opportunity to be inside this phenomena. And that same year in 2015, I was also given the opportunity to make my first outdoor piece. Although it was temporary, I never wanted to just put a statue on a plinth. That wasn't what I wanted to do as a sculptor or an installation artist. If I was going to make work in the public realm, it still had to be immersive. It still had to be kaleidoscopic and colourful. And here is what I came up with. So taking the principle of prism, which is, of course, as we know, one of the most important shapes in light theory, and create a tunnel for people to be able to walk through, to be able to see two colours come together and physically overlap to create a new colour. So as people walked through this tunnel, they would see the world around them saturated. So it's important to say as well that at this point, I was quite afraid of making work with natural light. The previous piece had been the first piece where I'd actually used the sun as my light source, but I was really stuck how to do that indoors, and this piece was my answer. So I was offered the opportunity to make a work in this church, which is now an art space. And I spent lots and lots of time there, almost like artist in residence, thinking about what this space needed, how I could respond to this space in a really sensitive way. So I took the palette of stained glass, and because it's a historic building, the work could not be fixed to any part of the building, suspended, fixed to the walls or the floor, so it had to be completely modular. I also wanted to make a piece of work that could tour and travel the world instead of being torn down, ripped out and put in the bin. So this work took, it's my water lilies. It's got that reflective nature. It's made up of 15 different colours, 4 different diameter circles, and I think there's about 795 individual circles laid out on the floor. And as the sunlight comes in through the plain windows, bouncing off the mirrors and illuminating the ceiling or parts of the architecture, again, illuminating parts of the building we might not normally notice. Yeah, this is a drawing on the back of an envelope, and this is how it all started. I think it's important as much to show you the big wow moments as it is to show you the starting points. And this was the drawing I did a few months before this piece was made in my 1-bedroom flat in Manchester, one morning during breakfast, and they had this brainwave of exactly what I wanted to create. And so I sketched it out and emailed it off to the curator, who instantly knew what I was trying to do. And what's great about this work is that every time I install it, it looks the same, but it's different. And installing it is like a dance piece. There's no map to it. It changes each time, and it can drift and change orientation and shape depending on the site. Now you'll see here in Berlin that there is no natural light in this old space. It's purely lit with stage lighting, so those reflections are really intensified on the ceiling. So in the same year that I made that piece, I was also invited by the Natural History Museum in London to make our spectral vision, which is the piece we can see in front of us. Going back to using artificial light was really great for me because I have an obsession with materials, and I had an obsession with dichroic glass, and the exhibition was called Colour and Vision, and it looked at how different animals and specimens have colour in their bodies, so like morpho butterflies with blue iridescence in their wings, or how different animals see colour differently or not. So I took the principle of Isaac Newton's prism, placed on a table with a chink of white light coming through it, and then being able to view the visible spectral colours in front of him. So here are my 7 prisms with my chink of white light running through the middle. More drawings. Now, at this stage, I hadn't made a permanent piece of work, and this was my drawing for what ended up being my first, which is in London permanently at Paddington Station. So this is my drawing, which then gets taken by my fabricators into CAD or SketchUp. They take my idea and it is presented to the commissioners. And then it ends up looking like this. So you can see the journey. That journey took 2 years, 2 rounds of planning permission, and me doing site visit and knowing instantly what that space needed, because that space was a horrible space and quite frightening through space for anyone to pass through. The detail is important to me. I am a perfectionist, so even just spraying the bolts the same colour as the mirrors is just key to making the work flow and seem succinct. A drawing for what ended up being a glow. More of a map, perhaps, because this drawing was then used to position exactly where these fluorescent acrylic bowls were going to be located in Paris as part of Paris Fashion Week. And what I love about this material, which I'd wanted to use for many, many years, was that it had these naturally glowing edges as if it was being plugged in with electricity. But of course, it's just the sunlight that creates this amazing effect. This is another permanent work in a hospital in the UK, and this is my first 2-dimensional piece of work. So how do you create a light work without a light source? How do you create a 2-dimensional work as a sculptor? I found this incredibly challenging. This was installed during the middle of the COVID pandemic in 2020, and it was a brand new hospital and needed some colour and some vivacity in its main atrium space. These seats were where people would sit and wait for life-changing news about their cancer treatment. So it was important to create something where I really thought about colour in an interesting way and gave people something to focus on that might take their eye on a journey through the space. And that was multicoloured and patterned, but also had a flash of light running through the centre. So this was the design I came up with, and me and my fabricators worked on a coding system, a computer program system, which generated random colours and sized shards, which I then went through individually to change to my exact requirements. So this was a labour-intensive work. But then I used the same principle on the tide in Greenwich. Now this work stretches 700 metres along this elevated park. But where better than the Greenwich Meridian line to make a sundial. And quite a lot of my works are sundials, taking the sun and allowing it to spill out onto the pavement. And I've done that many times with my outdoor works. And, you know, sometimes artists are lucky enough to have the opportunity to remake pieces, revisit pieces. How can we make them better? How can they be refined? So here is an adaptation of a work that you saw earlier on. I'm learning new methods, for example, how to inject ink into polyester to make it optically clear rather than using vinyls. Or if I'm using vinyls, like in this pavilion, how I can use it to its true scale and effect. So here's a piece that is coming to New York this summer. Nobody knows that yet. That is an exclusive, but was originally commissioned for Canary Wharf in London. So again, if I'm going to put a sculpture in the public realm that is about colour, people have to be able to enter into it. And here you can see my drawings from how I took it to a kind of singly walled object to a more dynamic structure, where people can actually enter through and observe the colours mixing and changing in front of their eyes. And this piece was also really lovely to use in a light night environment. So instead of being used in the sun or in the daytime, changing it with a core of LED lights to turn it into a nighttime piece. And I think it works differently, but equally as well. I mean, it really is a kaleidoscope here. And last but not least, my most recent piece, again, another permanent public realm sculpture. And you might be questioning my use of light here. There is none. It's not floodlit, it's not self-illuminating, it is block colour. Still fascinated in shape and geometry and how I can create an artwork that changes by itself. This isn't kinetic, by the way. I mean, it changes as people walk past it. We're using our eyes and our brains as the best technology there is out there. But when this piece is illuminated in the dark by car headlights or someone's torch on their phone, it pings like a Christmas tree. And so this is made of road sign material, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. When you're driving down the motorway and your car headlights hit it, you know exactly what it says on it. And for me, the litmus test as a lone female traveller going anywhere is, do I feel safe? And if I can make work in the public realm that does exactly that, then I think I've succeeded. And so not only do I make work of this scale, which is incredibly challenging, but I'm also now returning to making smaller scale work, which is gallery based, more intimate, more, I don't know, definitely more intimate. And they might be referencing kind of scientific instruments for looking at light and colour, but watch this space, because it's all to come, and hopefully I've got a lifetime ahead of me of making art. So go on my Instagram and you can follow the journey. But if you want to see the big stuff, go on my website. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That was, oh, wow. That was super inspiring. Super inspiring. I think that most of us want now to go and try to find a fluorescent and wrap around them and see what it feels, and also experience with color and perception. I think we can talk about, we have some questions from the audience also at the end of the meeting, but I think in the representing all the community from Chile, we are very, very grateful for your inspirational talk, and also tells you that you have some fans from Katia Colovea from London. He's saying that your work was really amazing when it hits the sunlight, and we have people from Mexico, Costa Rica, and Argentina saying just wonderful things. So, and from Chile, of course, and yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I can see all the comments. Lovely.
Yeah,
It's lovely to see names I know as well. So lots of love to you guys.
yes, very, very inspirational. Really, really, I'm super happy. So now we will go to the next talk, which is Aleksandra Stratimirovic. Alex was visiting Chile in 2018. So, and I will present her in Spanish. Aleksandra Stratimirovic ya tiene más de 25 años de experiencia en el mundo del arte y la luz. Aleksandra tiene un amplio conocimiento de la comprensión de la luz y las tecnologías de iluminación. Es la autora de series, de las series internacionales temporales y permanentes de arte y luz para numerosos lugares públicos, hospitales, campos escolares, estaciones de tren, zonas residenciales, etc. Ella es serbia, pero hace muchos años que reside en Suecia y se mueve alrededor también del mundo escandinavo. Y una de las cosas interesantes es que Alex es miembro de un grupo que se llama The Lighting Detectives, que recorren distintas ciudades del mundo tratando de descubrir cuáles son las características de la luz en la ciudad y también poder hacer aplicaciones urbanas. So, Alex, are you there? I see you there, super pretty as always. And I also wanted to share that you introduced me in the world of art. This is a particularly interesting talk for me because I followed the Lighting Detectives to Serbia. It was a meeting that you organized. You were my tutor. So then now it's a very honor for me and for us that you can share with us whatever you want. I know you will present a video first, a talk, and then close with a video. So now the floor is yours, Aleksandra Stratimirovic.
Thank you very much, Hola, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be part of this conference. I enjoyed very much Lee's presentation of her beautiful works, and I'm happy now to share with you some of my projects. I'll try to share my screen and to start the presentation with a video of my work transmission. Let's see how that works. Maybe like this, and then no, I need to start again.
So meanwhile you start, I can also ask to the audience, which are most friends, and anything you want to ask, you can write it in the chat.
Aleksandra, Jimena here. You have to do it again, and when you share your screen, you have to click on the down button that says that you will share your computer's sound or audio. So we will hear the video.
Okay, I understand. I'll start again.
There's a click below
Okay.
in the down left corner.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So Grimeton radio station is an early long-wave transatlantic wireless telegraphy station built in 1924. It's preserved as a historical site situated in Grimeton Park municipality. It's the only remaining example of an early pre-electronic radio transmitter technology. UNESCO World Heritage List in 2004 as an outstanding monument representing the process of development of communication technology. The first time in connection with this assignment and was taken with this site's industrial building. The first thought was to create a work that highlights the great and I wanted to add an unexpected element. Surprisingly, this perceptive on the long the radio station's invisible activities in the back. It was really visible again. Transmission space is similar in the radio station communicating. The light beams turn towards convey messages that are based on UNESCO's work to international peace, universal respect for human rights, and sustainable development. Words such as peace, friendship, love, power. A few months later. Okay, am I back now? You see me?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Now I'll share again, continuing with here. This was, I saw that you announced my talk with this image. It's a sunny day installation. It's a work I did in 2018. It was a hard work. And then I picked up, to remind myself of that work, I picked it up to tell you a few words and history about this one. But this, this work comes, it started with this one, a girl with ice cream. I did a proposal for Targetti Light Art Award competition in 2018 to create a work of using in a certain dimension, which is here in the box. At that time, my studio was very small. I worked quite hard in that one, trying to make bigger works in a tiny place, trying to be creative in a mess. I succeeded making this work, putting up the small vials one by one, mixing colors to create a girl with ice cream. Many times my small girls, which were small at that time, helped me or made it even more difficult. As soon as I turned my back, something would happen with my work. They were creating their own versions of my work. And with this kind of work really needs a great commitment and concentration, because you work with the little drops creating the work. Well, eventually I succeeded to mix correct colors in this in vials, and to create a girl with ice cream in a way that I was happy with. It is a light box. It is a collection of around 1,000 vials that, looking from a close collection of little bottles, but looking from the far, you see the portrait of a girl with the ice cream. I won a prize, the Targetti Award, which was money. Very often we get money as an art prize. And then I wanted to test a bigger size of a similar approach. I had an exhibition planned like a month ahead, and I thought that would be a good opportunity to test if I could make the same kind of work, but in much bigger dimension. So I didn't have much time to collect and to do the works. I wanted to make a portrait, or I wanted to make a sunny day. So I had to take myself as a model for this work. I made a sketch, made a sketch how I will work with the most complicated part of the piece, which is the face. And maybe luckily that I use my face that I'm most comfortable with, or know most of all faces that I could like easily or more easily describe in this other material. I moved to bigger space from 24 square meters to a double or 3 times bigger, and build a light scope of size 3 meters by 2 meters. I had troubles finding vials in the right number, but yeah, I managed in time, and I managed to send the work to Ljubljana for the exhibition. So Sunny Day consists of 4,446 glass vials that are filled with a colored liquid, each one filled by hand with a drop of a pigments mixed in a correct way to create the image that I wanted to create. With help of light, the image gets more vivid, but also the form of vials get vivid. So if you stand in front of it very close, you see this beautiful collection of same products filled with different liquids. But from the distance, this close-up experience changes into an image with a deep dimension. It was shown on many exhibitions through following years. This one here is shown is in Stockholm, art fair in Stockholm. It's quite complicated work to build up, and it's sensitive. And as here on this image, I left some spaces without any vials to make an imperfection in a piece that makes it more handmade. Look, I mean, it is handmade, but if everything would be filled up, it would have been too much. So with this experience of having this experience of close, for viewers of being close to the work, and then being afar, I was invited for a competition to do a work, to come with a proposal for a permanent work for a school in Stockholm, in Sundbyberg. So my proposal was heroes. to create a collection, this time of lumínicos, in a foyer of the school, to create a work that involves and engages children, that exists in symbiosis with the architecture and complements the environment with a positive element. So the work would, the proposal was won the competition, and I was happy to be able to make it in real. Here my kids were at the time still interested to be in my studio and to help me. Also be my models. This is not the case anymore when they're big, but sometimes very, very nice to collaborate with kids. I mean, in this project, kids are very important. So not only my kids, but also kids from the neighborhood and kids from around the world. So Heroes is a work that consists of 500 light dots that are integrated in a foyer of the school. This piece here is in my studio. I'm doing the tests to see for the first time if this illusion of that I want to achieve will work. Because here I work with a new material. It's not a vials that I can control myself. It's a light source that I imagined that would work, but I was not able to test in a small until I got the budget ready and could order material and make it work. So my hopes were big, and it actually worked. Here it's always difficult to take a good photo of a light work. The colors become too washed up, too white. But the dots are experienced as not as a light source. They're more experienced as a dot of color. In the project, I collaborated with the photographer, Tommaso Bonaventura. He's from Rome, and he has his own projects that he was working on together with the schools and school children all over the world. This project, it was not possible to collaborate with the school children from this school in Sweden because of different regulations, but it was possible to work with the children in Rome and in the villages of Serbia. So together with Tommaso, we collected hundreds and hundreds of portraits of children who wanted to be part of this project. And they are part of this project, and they are in the same age as the children that are going into Lilla Alby school in Sweden. So here is the Heroes installed in a foyer of the school. It's a vibrant work. It's always changing in a pace that is it's a quiet pace, but it's visible. The change is obvious. Standing close to it, you see colorful dots that are slowly changing with some transmissions in between these portraits that are more dynamic and more lively. When the portrait goes change to another child portrait. Very soon, kids in the school discovered that using their mobile phones, they will get a perfect, very small and very precise image of the portraits. Standing close to it, it's a screen of colorful dots. Sitting in the school, the place where they gather and they have a food, lunch room. From the distance, the portraits of children become more obvious. So this is what I like with this work, because it changes character as you walk around. Kids are spending years there, And every time they pass, they will experience something else. This is like, I wanted to show you how it is like when you're very, very close, but the colors are not really showing in a way how I want it, because all these dots are just very nice colors. And then when you have a distance from the work, the portraits of children become very clear. Very often I do commissions for public spaces, for hospitals, train stations, outdoor spaces, indoor spaces. And I like this challenge of a work, integrating work in a places that are not originally created and don't have function to be art spaces. But adding art in this kind of environment adds something special. So I like very much to get involved in projects that are school projects or hospitals or whatever it can be. So this was another competition in a sauna school in Aarhus in Sweden, a place that is a beautiful place, beautiful town, mostly famous because it's the home of Absolut Vodka. But it has other big qualities as well. It's a nature reserve. It's famous for sand dunes. And the sauna school is located on one of these amazing sand dunes. And being on the sand dunes, that means the landscape is changing always. Weather conditions are also changing very, very fast in this part of Sweden. So sand somehow was my obvious inspiration for the work, which is also called sand. A sand, which is a very fine grained granular material, consists mostly of quartz. And quartz is mineral made up of Earth's most common elements, silicon and oxygen. One silicon atom and two oxygen atoms composed in a crystal system. It reflects sun, it reflects rays, and create a nice effect. So this movement of sand dunes that are in constant movement and in constant communication with the sun and daylight and weather conditions was my direct inspiration to create sand monumental sculpture, or mobile, to place in a central place in a sauna school. It's placed under the generous skylights. And the concept is to create a work that embodies the movement of the sand crystals with its constant change of color and form, just inspire the beauty of Aarhus and their dunes. So particles in my sand are based on a silica model, like a large circle with two smaller circles. I was always like this dichroic materials to work with, and how it has the interesting and exciting connection and collaboration with the light, with the daylight, the artificial light also. And here it was the perfect setting to use this material in this scale, because the light, the position of the work just under the skylight makes it work together with the light. In this part of Sweden, sun is it's very windy, the clouds are coming, disappearing, sun is changing condition, light is different from minute to minute. And that I find very interesting in there, and especially how the architectural form of the building makes it really focus on these light changes of light conditions. So the sculpture have this communication with the weather conditions, and they're all constantly changing in a color, in shape, in intensity. And when the daylight is not enough and the artificial light takes over, there are some spotlights directed to the sculpture, and then sand has another communication with the light sources. And here so you can see some details of it. It's like never same. It's always changing, depending also where you stand and how you look and what's the light condition at that moment. It's a work, it's dimensions of 5 by 5 by 5. I have other works also that I made for schools, and the approach of making public artworks for schools is it's different from doing public artworks for another situations. Here, this place that I'm showing here is in Gothenburg, in the suburbs of Gothenburg. It's in Sweden, a problematic area where 3 artists were invited to come with a proposal for a work with light, a permanent work with light, that will be as a present to the people in this area, with the idea to change the attitude of a neighborhood. This is a garage. It's like end point somehow for everything. A place where not very good things were happening. And whoever would come to this garage is either you park a car or it's a drug market. But the garage is placed on it's visible from far. It's not very attractive building. But it is a good pedestal for artwork. So my artwork that I proposed, and I was happy to got a commission to realize it, is called You Are the Dream. And it's a poetic work, a luminous text that hovers over the garage building. It's neat, unpretentious letters are the building blocks of this artwork. As the surrounding of the building consists also of repeating elements, same windows, same luminaires, same balconies, same concrete blocks. I drew parallel of those elements and created my artwork, repeating the letters. The luminous letters offers an experience that can be interpreted in various and personal ways. It's like a Gloria over this garage. The letters are pink, light pink, like a baby pink color. And it's like I would say like a diadem that hovers over the garage. At the first glance, the work is perceived as an unbroken line of letters, like a crown that adorns the garage. But at the next glance, next time you pass by, the meaning of text begins to emerge when the letters become words and words become sentences. The text is in Swedish, and it says, "You are the dream, you are the longing, you are the gold, you are great, you are beautiful, you are strong, you are the thought, you are proud, you are hope, you are wise, you are free." And hopefully it gives a feeling of positive feeling to everyone who visits this area, who lives here, who passes by this place every day. It was inaugurated in 2019, I think, or 20, just in this dark period of COVID and other dark things happening. This, I'm ending my presentation with one of the works that are, it's installation. And they started on this place. This is the west coast of Sweden, Smögen, a small fishing village situated on these magnificent granite rocks. In Smögen, for the last 3-4 years, in the September days, there is a festival of light happening called Island of Light. In 2018, I was invited by the founder of the Island of Light, Dulce Alberg, to create a work that is inspired by this place, inspired by the environment, inspired by the nature, and created for this place. So I went to Smögen, met with Dulce, and we went around in this fantastic and very picturesque place. It was very inspiring. But what made me mostly curious about and excited about is the people who live there and who work to maintain this beauty in a very nice and sustainable way. Smögen is a fishing place with a very long and rich fishing history. Now that is of course changing because it's also a very touristic area, especially in the summer months. But there are people still living all year around in this area and still working with the fishing and taking care of the sea. So the local initiative of recycling or cleaning sea and establishing marine recycle center in this area is a very unique initiative. So they made special tools to collect all the ghost nets and the other fishing equipment from the sea bottom and to recycle it in the best possible way. So this is like a paradise place for me, or I guess for any others who would come here and discover these mountains of fishing nets that come from the sea bottom and other equipment, killing life in the sea. but here is waiting for a next life. So I used these fishing nets to create Underworld, an installation in form of luminous forms to depict an imaginary tiny undersea settlement. I use disposed fishing nets that are collected from the sea bottom by this local village initiative of the sea cleaning actions. And those various fishing materials that have been resting on the sea bottom for ages, now reused in this project, they get a new light and new life. From different ages, with the different histories, these reused fishing nets are created giant lanterns. Underworld was shown in Smögen in 2018, actually, not in 20. And depicts the dimension of everyday life as of a fictional civilization under the world, under the sea level. Later on, it was shown on other exhibitions, like this one in Austria, in the forest of Austria. And a special soundtrack that is a very important part of this work is composed by Argentinian composer Leonard Kaplan. Soundtrack links this imaginary world from under the water with the real life, combining sound of the real life with fantasy life. Here are some images from different exhibitions. And I would like to end my presentation with a video of the Underworld. For the moment, I will stop sharing my video and I will try to go back to see. Excuse me for the moment.
So meanwhile you find your video, I will recap and yes, and tell you that this was also really inspiring to see the work from starting with this super technological image of the electric towers sending signals in lasers, and then finalizing with this very sensitive approach to work with the village, with the fishing man, and very sensitive material. So when you finish, after this meeting, I will switch very fast to Jen Lewin, because we will have running out of time.
Okay.
It's not so long, isn't it? The video.
Do you? It's not. It's 2 minutes. But let me. I don't manage. I mean, I have it here. I just don't know how to get now back to share with you. Let me see where.
So everybody says beautiful, wow, amazing, increíble. So you have a lot of amazing expressions, and also tell you that people from the UK, Mexico, Costa Rica, Argentina, Colombia watching this, and also the Chilean community. Most of the audience are lighting artists, so it's also nice to see that everybody is with the hands on the art, or that is making your own things, and it's a lot of work, because sometimes for us, watching the things that happens in the North Europe, and we think that everything is super cool, but everybody is struggling to make art, and that is also inspiring for us. It's working, Alex, the video? Or maybe we can switch to Jen.
Yeah, well, I think we switch to Jan because it takes time here and I can't. I mean, I cannot. Hey, now, yeah. You have 2 minutes. I found it.
2 minutes, Jen?
It's okay.
Because we are relaxed and don't Super. Wow, very, very nice to finish with this
Thank you.
inspiring creatures from the sea. So thank you, Alex. And now we are going to present Jen Lewin. Jen Lewin, it's our final lighting artist. So we are very happy to have her here. And I will introduce you, Jen, with the view I have in Spanish. Jen Lewin es una artista e ingeniera reconocida internacionalmente con sede en Brooklyn, Nueva York. Durante su carrera de 27 años, Lewin ha perfeccionado su formación arquitectónica y un medio altamente técnico para fabricar esculturas públicas, interactivas a gran escala, que resaltan la energía de la conexión humana y el poder de la acción colectiva. So, thank you, Jen, and we are very happy to have you here. And take your time, because we are more relaxed than so don't worry about the time, because everybody is super engaged and we don't have this opportunity so often. So I'm sure we will be like giving all your attention to whatever you want to tell us. So thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Amazing work, Aleksandra and Liz. Really beautiful, beautiful work. Very inspiring. Well, I am here in Brooklyn. I'm gonna, you're actually in my studio. My team is around as well. I'm going to actually share my screen in a bit though and talk a little bit about my process and the work, how I got started, but also some of the work I've been making over the last 3 years specifically. So we'll start by screen sharing. And are you guys able to see that? Good, great. All right. And actually, hold on just 1 second. There's something that is missing. So I'm going to just start a timer here. Sorry, here we go. All right. So I'm not going to go too much in detail of my background. I actually have quite a few presentations. I talk more in detail about where I came from, but I think what's important about the history of me as an artist is I was really interested in sort of all aspects of technology, but all aspects of art. And for me, it was the mashup of these things. And so earlier artwork I created really had so many different integrations. And you're looking at a very good example of that made almost 30 years ago, where I painted batik silk. I wove LEDs. There's actually teeny little discrete LEDs woven in this. I made this circuit board. So you're looking at circuits, electronics, silk painting, sketching. And then I built a large form, which was a robotic butterfly that you could dance with. And this did have light integrated. It had this light piece in the center, which was this optical eye, and you could walk up to this sculpture and it would move and dance. I think this is kind of an interesting example of me and my interests, because again, you're just looking at really all these different disciplines kind of smashing together into one place: mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, code. I had to program all of this, but also painting and form, choreography and movement. So you kind of see all of these things showing up. From a very early age, I was infatuated by light. I actually started building laser harps now also about 30 years ago. And a laser harp, what was interesting to me about laser harps is I was using these very, very low tech laser beams, but I was creating a sculpture with them that allowed you to use your body. And what was interesting to me about the lasers was what they looked like on your body and your hands, but also I could make them interactive and you could play music. Some people don't know what a laser harp is, so we'll just listen a little bit to
By moving your hand through each of the 60 light beams, you mix different sounds. For example, each beam can trigger up to 12 different sounds based on how you're moving. Slow movements create rhythmic pulses and whispering echoes. Fast movements create sharp notes and more jagged sounds.
I also started to play with the idea of using light. So not just light as interactive element, but also light as really the source of drawing people into a sculpture. This is a piece that does this quite literally. It's a piece called The Moths, and I use light to attract humans. It's not a coincidence that the sculpture is a moth, which is often an animal that is itself attracted to light. But here I'm actually sucking humans into the sculpture. And you had to be part of the sculpture for it to happen. You had to touch this light object on the ground and it sensed capacitance and it would strobe. And then based on how you sort of touched this light object, this giant ethereal moth above you would set to flight and would move. So here really playing with this notion of light and using light to sort of capture people into the sculpture. I mentioned that I had this engineering side. I think what's interesting about all the work is that it was almost all built in-house entirely. And that includes the lighting systems and the lighting drivers. This is an example of an early lighting driver, which might give you some people anxiety if you look at all of those wires, lots of things to take care of. But that became the brain, for example, for this work, which was called the Edison Cloud, created from glass and sort of tracking human movement through the work. So again, I'm sort of using light to bring people into the work, quite literally. The work comes to life only through people within it. I also started to get the opportunity to build large outdoor light sculptures. This was interesting as well. This is one of my oldest and largest works to date. This is in Vail, Colorado. This is a very old work. And in fact, well, here's some pictures of my team building it, working in this really amazing fiberglass facility in California. Come back to the sculpture. This sculpture hit its 12-year mark, and you know, lighting technology doesn't live forever and had to actually be repaired. It was in really dire straits. So actually went back last year to rebuild it. This is my team there rebuilding it. I think this is just kind of an interesting example of illuminated public art, because there's this aspect of illuminated public art that needs to be refurbished. Typically, in my case, I would say every 7 to 10 years. So had to go back and had to rebuild it. The work, this is the work now just taken from a phone. It actually is still being refurbished. The fiberglass will be finished this summer. So really a long sort of 2-year process to refurbish and rebuild this sculpture, but quite a fun sculpture I've been part of. Over time, over the span of my career, the work has gotten more sophisticated from the early butterflies, and certainly the technology has gotten more sophisticated. I have several of these pieces. These are my laser harps. They've just, every year they almost improve on the technology side. This is this lovely image, one of my favorite images of my artwork, because I think it encapsulates how almost intoxicating and attracted as humans we are to light, because this is really bringing everyone in. But you start to see in my work as it progresses kind of more refined engineering, which I had to learn the hard way. So now instead of the clumbles, of wires, I'm using much more defined sensors. This is a custom sensor that I actually have had built. I actually use an even more refined one now that actually drives all of the sculptures, drives all of my laser harps. So I had to really sort of almost invent the technology behind the work. The pieces really, as they progressed, I really got more and more opportunities to build public works. And these works were quite fun. This is a loved sculpture I have in Minnesota. Tricky to make a work in Minnesota, by the way, because it's very hot in the summer there and very cold in the winter. So creating a lighting system that could survive the weather was not an easy feat. This is a sound and light piece, and we'll listen to it a little bit. And what you start to see in these works, which has evolved and is something that I'm very passionate about, is this sense of play. This really lovely, joyful sense of play that I am sort of developing and creating by creating these interactive moments using light. So by using light, I'm creating this moment of play and playfulness. Often there's sound, there's not always sound. You'll see some examples without sound. But for me, this was really interesting. And the light is not always visual. These are some of the interactive sculptures that are all over California. They use light, they use infrared light. You can't see them, I can't see the laser beams, but it's light and it's interactive light. Creating this really wonderful, fully accessible sculpture that allows everyone to get together. I'm very known for this work. This is one of my sort of prolific OG works. It's called The Pool. I originally built it in 2008. I conceived of it in 1999, so it took a long time before I actually was able to build it. And this is a piece that's really about creating a light playground, a place that will allow people to play within this scope of light that's interactive and playful, and then to within that have a dynamic community experience together. It's been a really profound experience with this work, because over the course of its many, many years of lifespan, it's traveled all over the world. And my team and I have had this pretty epic experience of being able to watch it travel. And we'll watch this for a second.
You're capable of such beautiful dreams and such horrible nightmares. You feel so lost, so cut off, so alone. In all our searching, the only thing we found that makes the emptiness bearable is each other.
One of the fascinating things is when you take a work like this around the world and you're in places, you know, that maybe we think are so different, from like Singapore to Bahrain to Chattanooga. You really expect the behavior of people to be different, but when it comes to play and light, I mean, my experience is that almost all humans are the same. We have the same response, regardless of what culture we're from, or, you know, where we are on the planet. There's this really core human response, which has been really amazing to watch. Of course, in my own practice, taking a work like that around the world required a lot of learning. This is the sculpture covered in snow. So how do I deal with it in snow? So much testing. These are some of the custom LED rings we make, us smashing LEDs, wanting to work, so freezing LEDs, overheating LEDs, really just like an enormous amount of testing and development around the actual hardware. Also playing with the idea of education, using these light sculptures to create educational systems to teach kids how to program, because we have this paradigm, or basically a language used in all of the sculptures that you can show children how to use, and they can actually program the light work themselves, which has been really wonderful. Creating apps. This is an application being drawn on, actually built by my husband, who I also met through my artwork. But he actually built this Android app to allow you to draw on the work in real time. So really just like a really exciting sort of learning and adventure around building so many different facets and elements of just this one work, the pool. The work grew. This is a piece I made called Aqueous. It was built in 2017. A little known tidbit about this video is this is the first time I ever saw the work all together, because the work was so large, it had to be built in pieces in my studio. I never got to see it all together until literally this moment, which is captured by a really talented drone pilot named Matt Emmy. And there's actually all these problems in the sculpture I see right now. I can see all these bugs, and this platform's not doing what they're supposed to do, because it was really being tested for the first time. But this is a large light sculpture that was designed to be modular, to take different shapes anywhere it was installed. This is a few hours after those videos, so it's still, again, the same day. So again, imagine testing your light sculpture in this condition and with so many people on it. So a little bit stressful, but definitely a great opportunity. That work has also traveled. Here you see in a different configuration, meandering through the trees. It was most recently a very large version of it in Tokyo. This was interesting because this installed right before shelter in place, like it installed in March of 2020. And it actually had to sit for almost 6 months, and was eventually opened because there was, it was agreed that these works were outdoors. And so even during the pandemic, when, all of us were kind of in these very complicated situations, this work was something that was believed to be outside and was be something that people could play on safely. So we were able to open this work in Tokyo. This is a fun one to show, but this is me actually tuning the work. The work is wireless, and so I'm walking on the platforms, and that's kind of identifying the platform's address. So you can lay these out on the ground, and I'm walking on them with my laptop. And I'm basically giving them an order. They're turning yellow. And that allows for this kind of interaction. You can see Charlie Lindgren from my team, and he's dancing and light shooting out from him. So this is an example of us kind of tuning and programming the work. Another fun, went too fast. Another fun exhibition during shelter in place in the US of Aqueous, sort of outside at the Oklahoma Contemporary. And again, it was just really lovely to be able to have these, to have the opportunity to have these exhibitions, when everyone else was sort of holed up inside. And I kind of last one showing a work just last April in New York. Now I'm talking about a lot of temporary work, but there's also been a lot of permanent work. When I move into the permanent sculptures, they have very different material. I use glass. Again, I'm using a similar LED system, but this is a beautiful piece that's out of structural glass in Norwalk, Connecticut. And I have actually many different versions of pieces like this throughout the world. Lots of large kind of interactive chandeliers. This is an interactive chandelier in Arlington, Virginia, that changes based on people as they move underneath it. So a really fun, very large work. Another sort of in-ground piece that sort of takes the place of pavers and really changes and transforms the way one might look at a simple alley. And here we have this interactive lightscape that's produced within the alley that people can play and run and jump and dance on. This is a work we completed recently in Florida, a light sculpture. So here you see just its spiraling form during the day. The shape is derived from the golden ratio. And then as soon as it's dark at night, it becomes interactive where all of the color and lighting changes based on people moving throughout the work. One thing I think that's interesting about these works that people don't know is that I spend an enormous amount of time on site for each sculpture, creating the palettes and creating the dynamic quality of the work and how it changes and how it adapts to people and then what colors it moves through. And this is all really done on site because I found that I can't actually do a proper job of that unless I'm there physically in the site. It needs to flow within the actual scape of the site, the other things that are in the site, and it's really site specific. And so while I might have built the technology system to enable something like this in my studio, the final moment of really composing the work and creating the experience of the work happens only physically on site. Another sort of fun one in Florida, which is permanent as well, glass, interactive. This is called Ascent. I actually really love this piece. It's on the smaller side for work that I do, but one of my favorites. These are pieces I actually just built last September. They're called the Edison Drops, and they use all this old glass with a custom LED system, and they're these interactive lights that create almost ripples, and you can walk underneath them. But you'll see they're sort of, and this video is sped up, but in real life, they're much sort of slower and more ethereal drops of, they're almost like they're creating these ripples of light. You can actually see there's a prototype of one behind me in real life in my office. A fun new work produced in Hawaii for the Iolani School, an interactive permanent work called Flow. We can listen a little bit to it. Obviously at night, this is so much more vibrant. You're looking at this during the bright of the day. At night, it fills the entire space and the entire wall. But this has been a fun project because it's been used by the school to actually help educate the kids. They come out and they do programming on it. We'll talk in season. They do programming. They've done math classes where they've looked at sequences of sounds I'm choosing. We talked about doing some programming with them as well about actually writing code for the sculpture. But they really, I think, they've loved the sort of integration of art and science in this work and really been great about bringing that together. My largest work, permanent work to date, though, is a work I just completed about a year and a half ago in the Minneapolis St. Paul Airport, and it's called the Aurora. And this is one of thousands and thousands and thousands of glass bulbs that are in the work. And these are interesting. I use these in a lot of my work. This is it's what would have been a 100-watt glass bulb, but it doesn't have the internal lighting system in it. So it's a glass bulb that was partially produced. And fascinatingly enough, it's almost impossible to have these made anywhere in the world anymore because we don't really make 100-watt normal bulbs. And so I was able to partner with a group that could keep all of these vintage molds and would actually keep the process of the original old way that old glass bulbs were made. And they still produce these for me using the old molds and using the old factories. So I can get these glass bulbs and they're imperfect. They have these interesting imperfections in them. But for me, when I light them with an LED, that imperfection creates this really beautiful twinkle that adds more warmth and sort of a more human quality than sometimes the LEDs themselves have, because I found that LEDs can feel a little bit cold sometimes. This work, though, and the next video, this is me prototyping the work. It's on its side. This is not how the work ended up looking, but this is a video of me prototyping. It's a sculpture that tracks humans, and based on the movement of the humans, they can create an aurora borealis of light that flows up through the work. And so I'm here doing code tests of the sculpture laid out on my side. It's kind of an interesting piece of video because it shows you what this work can look like in my studio. After sort of prototyping the work, it went to Minneapolis, and we spent almost 4 weeks installing the sculpture in the airport. And the stripes you're looking at right now in the sculpture are indicative of how we are tuning it and addressing everything, figuring out how to put the work. This is a custom LED module you're looking at the back that actually screws onto my glass light bulb that was produced to create this work, and we'll see it in a minute. You can see how the form of it swoops up through the 2 floors. I spent a lot of time really thinking about this form and how this form could transform and change the space. I love the curvy swoopness of it. And the final work is a full interactive aurora borealis that has these beautiful colors and gradations that are triggered by people below. Here, this green color you'll see is this young girl running around, and underneath it are interactive lakes that also light up underneath you. One of the very cool things about this sculpture is that it's connected in real time to the outside weather, and there are hundreds of palettes I made based on weather conditions. So not only is it interactive, but the actual interactive colors that show up and are chosen are pulled from direct weather. So if it's snowing outside, there's a snow palette, and then you're dancing with blues and whites. If it's raining outside, it's a rain palette. If it's thundering, there's a thunder palette. And so hundreds of different color palettes in this that I spent almost 8 months designing and composing, that then adapt and change also in real time to the weather. So not only is there this connection to the human in the space, but there's this wonderful connection to their outside environment within Minnesota, which has, pretty dramatic and awesome weather. One of the things I've touched base on in this is the technology side of it. For me to be able to do this work, it's absolutely imperative that I build the systems to make the work. If I were relying on someone else to engineer them, I wouldn't be able to do this. It would honestly be too expensive. So, really, in truth, everything is built in-house, but that's challenging. This is a map that shows all of our suppliers and fabricators around the world. In order to build this work in-house, we have this relationship that now is global. So as a small art studio, we're dealing with global manufacturing. And, you can imagine right now that's very tricky. There's really huge supply chain issues. There are a lot of things that are really complicated about this. But it's just the reality of what I do. This is an example of one of the control modules that I have in my work. We have hundreds of these. They go in sculptures. And, this is a spreadsheet, for example, I just spent almost 4 weeks staring at, which is all the components that go on that circuit board. And I had to source them and find them, and a lot of them were not available, and a lot of things had to be changed because of supply chain issues. So really just this dance back and forth for me as an artist, both in perceiving the work I want to make, but also then trying to figure out how I can build it and how I can build it, and then in my own creative artistic process, in a surprising way, spending a lot of time looking at a spreadsheet, which I think would surprise people. It's not really what people normally think of as an artist, or what an artist does. But I'm going to jump now to the work I'm building right now. This is a work that I conceived of actually in 2008 and have been trying to build since. And It's going to be my largest work to date. I'm really, really excited about it. It's called The Last Ocean, and we'll watch a little bit of a video of it as to sort of kick it off. And I cropped the video a little bit.
In all our searching, the only thing we found that makes the emptiness bearable is each other.
So this would be an 8,000 square foot interactive sculpture made entirely out of ocean claimed plastic trash. And it's been a really wild journey of hands-on building, finding this incredible group called Ocean Plastic Technology to work with, to partner to build this, and then to create this large traveling work called The Last Ocean, which is really about speaking about climate change, but also making sure that the work is built authentically and truly out of all these reclaimed sources. And then also making sure that as we move forward, the work can be as well also exhibited in a way that's climate conscious, but also if it ever needs to be recycled itself, in a way. These are photos of some of the collected trash. All of the plastic material was collected in South Africa from ocean ways, from the water, from rivers that are ocean bound. It had to be collected and sorted. There's an entire cleaning process, and then there were months of us trying to develop the right way to sort of take this plastic particulate and actually build surfaces that would be flat enough, that were transparent enough for light. So many light tests, really tricky to get the right mix of using this material basically out of all this trash and still have it glow in a beautiful way, because it also needed to be a light object. Really interesting fiberglass technology made out of resin that's also created from ocean plastic trash. A company called Earthkind Resin. These are these fiberglass platforms. This is Mikhail Flores-Amper from my team, who really took the lead on designing a lot of these different forms. So he's kind of measuring things. We're actually in South Africa. This is several months ago, testing everything. Doing light tests, of course, everything had to be tested. This is me putting one of my circuits down, as well as LED strip. And then the infinite hours on video chat between New York and South Africa, trying to make this work happen. Our hope is to preview it at Burning Man for the first time this September, and then to start traveling it to public exhibitions. And we actually did just finish 20 of the platforms. This is 20 out of what will be 300 platforms in the end. And this is at my studio last Friday with some kids who came over to user test the work. Nothing better than kids to user test. You can see a little bit of the 1/15 of the sculpture being played on. And I'll end just with some shots of my studio. Everyone kind of is always interested in the studio. This is my studio in Brooklyn, located right kind of down near the power plants on the water near the Brooklyn Bridge Park. And here we are sort of working in the studio, and I'll show you another gray moat. I have this great team. We're here. If you're ever in New York, you're welcome to reach out to us and possibly come by. Kind of another shot of the team. This is actually us building Aqueous a year ago. Planning and lots of crates and lots of work around logistics and planning. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Like, I think everybody is clapping inside because it was super, super inspiring also. And so all the comments are like, wow, amazing, impresionante, qué belleza, cuático, which is like Chilean, and also some amazing comments from the museum, of the interactive museum here. So basically all our audience are a community of people that are involved with light and arts, and it is very, very impressive. There is a question for, let me find it, Catalina Harasic, for you, Jan. And she asked about your background. She said if your milestone was lighting design or coding, or did you start with both knowledge already?
So I couldn't pick between art. I couldn't pick between art and engineering. I wanted to be an engineer and I wanted to be an artist. Well, my original background is as a trained ballerina. So yeah, you see movement in all of my work, and I was a dancer. So I like to make people move. But when I went to undergraduate, I couldn't pick between the art school, and I couldn't pick between art school and engineering. And so right now there's new media programs when I went to college that didn't exist. And so I actually studied architecture, not because I wanted to be an architect, but because architecture let me take classes in the art school and in engineering. So for me, I've always loved both. And I've always felt, to me, it's a myth, your right brain, left brain. I think that's a lie. For me, it was like I wanted to do both together. So it's the integration of the engineering and the art together that's really amazing to me. And where they meet, there's so much to discover where they meet. And I'll spend my life looking at that, sort of the connection between those two.
That's super interesting. So I will invite, if Liz is there, Alex is there to open the mics, and well, to thank you. It's 12, so officially we're finished, but as we are more relaxed, if you want to share with us or comment between each other, will be also, or tell anything you want to close this event. I had a lot of questions, but I think due to the time, we will skip it.
Well, yeah, I'm very honored to be here with such an amazing panel of women in light art. It's really incredible.
You are the three of you are our favorites around the world. So we are very, very honored.
I loved how different you were in the way that you show your work and how you approach your work. I love the Liz's emotional approach. It's very sensitive, and I think you touch people with your colorful work. Aleksandra is like it's very poetic and very I don't know, very, very profound, very deep in her approach to her work, and then well, just so playful your work is, and I would like to visit some of your work sometime. All of your work. I think we would all take a plane tomorrow to visit them. But I think it was a really nice and different approach from each other, which I think it nurtures this talk and everybody's feeling about light art.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm sat here and feeling completely speechless because I feel really inspired by Jen and Alex's talks. Work I am really familiar with. and just, I think, as with a lot of light arts, including my own, it really needs to be experienced in person. And even though the videos and the photographs are amazing, as you said, it would be lovely to jump on a plane and just to see each other's work. So yeah, such a delight to be in the same digital room as all of you. Thank you for putting us together.
Yes.
Thank you. I would like to thank from my side also for organizing this interesting event, and it was a pleasure and very inspiring to see the works of Jan and Liz. Beautiful, beautiful, and yeah, it's great to see hard work and great ideas.
It's a lot
And a
of
big
work.
audience.
It's a lot of work, yeah.
It's very impressive to see each one of you and see that behind us is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Testing and putting your hands on the, on the thrash or whatever. It's a lot of work. So when we have this kind of culture of the Instagram, moment, and when we see the lighting art or the lighting design or whatever, it's very like sexy images, but is a world different when those works are immersive and you feel it and you can experience. So I think that is very fascinating.
And it's really nice as well to see it. Oh, sorry guys that are in the room, but it's so nice for it to be all women as well, because one of the things that I've really come up against in my career for the last 15 years is always being on short lists or long lists with guys, and quite a lot of the most famous light art that we all know are men. And so it's really inspiring to see that there are strong women voices, which are often very sensory and sensual voices within the light art world, who are doing it. And if I could calculate the amount of hours, pounds or dollars, the amount of nights sleep lost and the amount of blood, sweat and tears that have gone into all these pieces of work, it would be phenomenal. So yeah, I think you're shaking your head, Jen. I know you agree.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been on. Yeah, the panels were also, you're sort of the one. Yeah, you're the one woman. You're the one person, woman in the competition. Yeah, it's changing though. It's lovely. It's changing. For me, because I've now been doing this for a long time. It's. I'm very hopeful. There's more and more amazing women showing up. It's really awesome, actually.
Yeah. Well, in Chile, it's we start this here, like in Chile, but somehow we managed to gather colleagues from Latin America. But here, for instance, the world of lighting for instance, lighting design are more women than men. So that is very curious, I think, around the world. But it's the connection, I think, when you mix with the technology, like Jen, you're doing with you show an Excel to see this is my art. That is more connected to normally we say, oh, okay, there will be engineers, will be all like a male role, but it's also nice to see that all of you will connect this technology. And also Elise says something that is this perfection, this looking for perfect detail, matching this perfection and the poetry. We all felt very much how a poetic approach is listening to Alex. So I'm super happy to meet you, virtually. Oh, Alex, I know her in like hugging because she's super cool. But I think now if there is no other questions, we can thank to Silus to organizing this. Thank you, Jimena, Marco, Martinez, who is very quiet but behind also everything.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you to all the audience. And if you want to open your mic and make a clap, it would be fantastic.
I hope the next year we can bring you to South America to make a on-site installation.
Or at least city side, or invite you to
Yes.
eat. Because also there
everyone
is,
wants that.
yeah, the Museum of Interactive Arts at Pekin is cheering up. So.
Yes, the Soledad from Pekin is here, I think. Or
That will be great.
So we have the site. We have the site. Yes.
Excuse
And
me.
also,
Go ahead.
yes,
Go ahead.
There.
No, I just want. Oh, go ahead.
Omar.
Go ahead, Jimena. I'm sorry.
Omar, dale.
No, okay. Jimena, I already listened to you saying if this can come into our country, you know, I'm an electric engineer, and first of all, I would like to say, you know, Jen, it's a great work. That's the only word that I can say to this job you've been done already. I work mainly for a mall here in Chile, and it's really kind of always using new technologies. Do you travel around the world with your exposition of lights?
Yeah, we travel a lot, actually. Travel a lot and travel to a lot of different public spaces, public parks, sometimes malls. Yeah, very common. If you actually look just on our website, you can see kind of the list of all the shows. But yeah, I have a team that is, but we have an exhibition, for example, opening in Las Vegas in 2 days. So that's an example. Yeah, so yeah, it's very common to travel.
Paulina, the only thing that I can say is the great exhibition. Thanks a lot to all of you. And of course, I would like to get in touch with you guys, you know, so if we can try to do some kind of a mix with one of the malls that I work for, okay? So it would be great to get in touch with you guys, okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much for everything.
Yo quiero solamente decirles en español a los que nos acompañan hoy día que mañana tenemos el encuentro en el GAM con artistas chilenos. Ahí sí que la mayoría son hombres, así que vamos a nivelar. Y el jueves tenemos un workshop organizado junto a Marco, porque realizaré una charla de arte lumínico, y Catalina Jarasic, que está por ahí en la Facultad de Diseño de la Universidad Católica. En nuestras redes sociales van a encontrar todos los links de inscripción. Muchas gracias a todos. Thank you very much, Jen, Alex, and Liz, for your amazing talk.
Amazing.
It was a great morning for us. We hope we get in touch. We hope we can get you here sometime. We hope that this event will grow in time and get stronger and with more artists like you.
Super. So,
thank you.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Woohoo.
Bye.
Bye.
See you. Bye bye.
El video se subirá a nuestra web de YouTube, así es que no se preocupen que lo van a poder revisitar.
Sí.
¿Ok?
Y mañana
muchas gracias.
En el GAM a las 5 de la tarde.
Sí.
En el
Muchas
GAM
gracias.
a las 5 de la tarde.
Ciao.
Adiós.
Thank you. Bye bye. See you.
Bye bye.
Chao, chao.
Chao.